So the iPhone 16 prototypes got leaked. Yeah. And there are some surprising changes that we get to learn from them. So here's everything you need to know. Essentially, Macrumors released this comprehensive report on a number of pre-production iPhone 16 units that Apple's been testing, codenamed DeLorean internally. There are 3 units in total, and they each have their own differences. But at the end of the day, all the differences fall into 2 categories: the camera and the buttons. Also, just to clarify, these are all iPhone 16 units and not iPhone 16 Pro units. Okay, so let's first talk about the camera differences. The first prototype, which is this yellow one right here, that Macrumors claims is the earliest version, has a pretty unusual camera module on the back, very reminiscent of the iPhone 10 and the XS design. Now, some people might really like this design, but I don't know if it's just me and I've somehow gotten way too used to the current design, but this just doesn't look too pretty at all to me. The second and third prototypes are more recent, and they have the same camera module, one that looks almost identical to the one on the iPhone 12, with 2 independent modules sitting on this glass bump. The only difference compared to the iPhone 12 is, of course, the noticeably larger size of the island, given by the newer and larger camera sensors. By the way, there are no details on the sensors themselves just yet, so at this point I'm simply assuming that these are the same sensors as in the iPhone 15s. Of course, we'll make another video as soon as we have some updates on that. Now, according to Macrumors, the reason why Apple wants to change the camera bump look is to make the new models more easily distinguishable from the previous ones, which I think makes perfect sense. The iPhone 15, 14, and 13, they've all had the same diagonal camera island. And even though the iPhone 15 did get a frosted glass back, from a distance, it is still quite hard to tell the difference between the 3. Of course, these are all early prototypes, so Apple might change their design until the launch. But if I could put my money on one design, it would definitely be the second one. I'm not saying this just because it looks better, but Apple has always tried to match the camera bump designs between the regular and the Pro models. So if they were to go with the first design, the iPhone 10 black glass camera island approach, they would need to do the same on the Pro models. And I think that having a gigantic black square covering the actual lenses on the Pro models, which are of course much bigger, would just look very weird and would take away a lot of that color that the Pro models have on the back. This is why I think they'll go with a second approach or something else entirely. Now, aside from the camera differences, there are a number of button differences too here. And before I get into them, something that I think you guys will find very useful is NordPass, our sponsor. As a business owner, NordPass makes my life much easier by providing me with the tools that I need to keep all of my company accounts secure and also on one easily accessible platform. I can even group accounts together with passkeys so that my employees can conveniently access whatever they need. I can also control the permissions to offer temporary access to freelancers so that they only see the information that they need. NordPass also keeps sensitive data such as PINs and Wi-Fi passwords secure too. Get a 3-month business trial by using activation code ZOT at nordpass.com/ZOT. And now, back to the video. So when it comes to the buttons, the first prototype features unified volume buttons, similar to what we've seen in some of the original iPhone 15 leaks, which of course never ended up happening. I should also mention that those unified volume buttons were also haptic buttons, which were capacitive and initially expected on the Pro models only, and ended up being cancelled due to production issues. So based on this prototype at least, Apple is considering reintroducing the capacitive haptic buttons next year, potentially on the non-Pro models of the iPhone as well. But what's even more interesting here is that this prototype also features an action button, which, as I mentioned in our previous videos, is indeed rumored to be present on the non-Pro models of the iPhone 16 next year. Seeing the action button on this prototype tells me that there is almost a certainty that we are going to see this. Now, the second prototype also features the action button, but this one comes with individual volume buttons that are mechanical rather than capacitive. While the third prototype is by far the most interesting one for 3 different reasons. First, the volume buttons are once again separated, which tells me that there is a much higher chance that we'll just see the usual volume buttons rather than the capacitive ones, as the mechanical ones have appeared in 2 out of 3 concepts. Second, the third prototype also has a larger action button, something that was reported on before. This action button is now said to be capacitive rather than physical like it was on the 15 Pros. And third, this prototype also features an extra button, which is this capture button on the bottom right. Now, if you've watched our video from October, this is where I've talked about this button more, and essentially this is rumored to be an additional button that will be dedicated to launching and controlling the camera. Hence why it is called a capture button. This button is internally called Project Nova, and according to Macrumor's sources, the whole idea started after Apple had to cancel the capacitive power and volume buttons on the iPhone 15 Pros, which allowed their engineering team to envision different ways of implementing capacitive buttons in the future. And one of those ways was this new capture button. And this button is said to be capacitive as well, rather than physical. So it will more than likely work like the trackpad on a MacBook, where you have different levels of pressure, which I think could very easily be used for focusing when you press it softly, and then when you press it harder, you can then take the shot. And I'm generally very excited for this. I currently have my action button on my 15 Pro Max configured to always launch the camera. And for the most part, it works great. It's just that I often find it quite hard to reach it and also quite hard to press it being this tiny. Even with the iPhone 16 prototype having a larger action button, having a dedicated one for the camera, like the capture button, that is noticeably bigger and perfectly positioned on the bottom right corner, which is where your finger would go when you take a photo in landscape mode, that would be just ideal. And since this will be a capacitive button, I would love to see Apple make use of gestures here. Like, I for one would love to be able to slide my finger up and down on it to be able to zoom in and out when taking a photo. I expected this capture button to only be on the iPhone 16 Pro models, so I was quite skeptical of the September leaks that were pointing towards this being on all models. But seeing this third prototype, which is a non-Pro iPhone 16, does make it more believable that we might actually see this on the standard iPhone 16s too. What's even more encouraging is that Macrumors is calling this third prototype the newest and the one that we will most likely see. I do have to mention that Apple reportedly developed an alternative version of the iPhone 16 that does not feature the capture button in case they do end up with more production issues. So do keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that we'll 100% see it, but it does mean that there is a strong possibility to potentially see it. So, okay, aside from the camera changes and the button changes, do these prototypes tell us anything else? Well, according to Macrumors, the colors in these prototypes are also the ones that Apple has been testing for release. These being, of course, midnight, yellow, and pink. The iPhone 15 does already come in these exact colors, so we might simply see a slight change in terms of their shade. Now, I do of course expect more colors on top of these when the iPhone 16 releases. It could be that the other colors are entirely new while these three are reused. Also, if you love the wallpapers that we've been showing you throughout this video, and you've been looking for some extremely high quality wallpapers that you can use on your iPhone, iPad, Mac, and all of your other devices too, look no further than our app, Wallpapers. Not only have we added the ability for you to download the full resolution 8K version of our wallpapers in version 1.1, but we've also launched 2 new packs today, Frosty Facades by Hanane and Dazzling Discs by Arif, for a total of 32 packs with 320 stunning wallpapers. You can check both packs out in Wallpapers today on the App Store and the Google Play Store. In the end, these prototypes do show us some very promising changes when it comes to the iPhone 16 lineup. And I, for one, love the fact that Apple is unifying the standard and the Pro models here by bringing features such as the action button and this new capacitive button to the non-Pro units. Of course, these are all early leaks, so things may change, so do keep that in mind. Feel free to check out the October iPhone 16 video where I went into the camera changes, as well as our November video where I went into the chip, the thermals, display brightness, and other changes as well. And do subscribe if you have enjoyed this one and you want to see more iPhone 16 Leaks and Rumors episodes. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.